Joined now from Sydney by New South Wales Labor leader Chris Minns. Mr Minns, thanks for joining us. And I might start by first of all asking about your reaction to the situation in Ukraine. We've had the New South Wales Premier call on the federal government to allow some refugees to settle here. So I might ask you about that, and also your call yesterday for the Opera House to be lit up in the Ukrainian flag.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Look, a horrifying situation in Europe. The first scenes that we've seen for 75 years of one country invading a democratically elected independent neighbour. They're horrifying pictures, and I think that the spirit of the Ukrainian people standing up to this overwhelming aggression from their neighbour has really, I think, rallied the world. So lighting up the Opera House in the Ukrainian colours, you don't expect it would make a huge difference, but in the age of social media, if people see that a country on the other side of the world is impressed with and standing with the resistance, then maybe it would inspire 1, 2, perhaps 10 people who are fighting this terrible war.
A poll indicated during the week you're ahead as preferred Premier. From Dominic Perrottet, you've had good results too at the recent by-elections, but the Resolve poll also found that Labor's primary vote was stuck at 34%. How are you looking at the difficulty of an election and getting a majority in a year's time?
Yeah, I think that is a big concern for New South Wales Labor. We've sort of managed over the last decade to convince people that the government's been wrong or criticise them on particular issues, but haven't been able to close the deal and get people to vote for Labor in a positive way. That's going to be the big challenge over the next 12 months. We don't just want to run an opposition that's focused on incessantly criticising Dominic Perrottet, but actually making a positive case to vote for Labor. That's a big challenge from opposition because obviously we need to get the airtime to do that. We need policy development, but we're determined to do it, and we're hopeful over 2022 we can make that case.
Now, people might look at the government, particularly after the train dispute, as a little bit L-plate-ish, but couldn't this be levelled at you as well? What experience could you bring to the Premier's job?
Look, at the end of the day, you saw incredible situations in Australia's largest city at the beginning of the week. The government shut down the transport network, and the Premier and Transport Minister both insist that neither of them had any idea that it was taking place. So 150,000 people turned up to their local train station to be told to go home, and we've got a situation where nurses had to use $100 in Uber to get to work, which is cost more than what they earned on their shift. And we're a week after the lockdown in Sydney. There's still not been an apology or an explanation as to what the hell happened on Monday, which I'm concerned means that they're doomed to repeat it, Andrew. We need to make sure that we get information, common sense decision making takes place, and you'd expect a government that's been in for 11 years to show some experience in relation to this. Hopefully, I believe we would bring some experience and common sense if we would have formed government in March 2023.
Well, these various industrial actions, we've had a few now from the public sector. The Liberal Party saying they're part of a concerted effort by the unions to help Labor into power federally and at the New South Wales level. What's your reaction to that?
Just an absurd conspiracy theory with no information or facts to back it up. Just, I think, a dodge from the New South Wales Premier in a desperate attempt to explain what happened on Monday morning. Again, no explanation, no apology to the 150,000 people that need public transport to get around Sydney. I mean, for anyone to believe the Premier's assertion, we would all be part of this conspiracy. But we all know now that the people that shut down the transport network were the government themselves.
Indeed.
And the paper reports this morning that private bus companies were being contacted to ship people around the week before, but the Premier himself didn't know.
Are you in favour of lifting the 2.5% wages cap on the public sector?
We are in favour of a productivity-based bargaining system with public sector unions, which means that when you do trade-offs about wages and conditions and workplace practices, you get a better outcome. That's what we believe needs to be the focus in New South Wales. At the end of the day, the government can't have it both ways. You can't have rising inflation, the cost of living going through the roof, while at the same time, 12 months ago, basically impose a real wage cut on the hundreds of thousands of public servants in New South Wales.
Obviously, you were hit this week with quite a damaging story around a trip that you and Chris Bowen, the federal frontbencher, took to China in 2015, which the Daily Telegraph said was paid for by Wang Zhengmo. Certainly it was paid for by a Chamber of Commerce that he chaired. Do you look back now and think perhaps I was a target of foreign interference?
That hasn't been put to me, Andrew. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd ask people to look at the circumstances in 2015. I was invited to go there. I'd never been there before. I was curious about the country. I was, I guess, in two minds about our relationship with China. I wanted to see it firsthand. It was an official trip. We met Francis Adamson, the Australian ambassador in China, and we mainly spoke about the trading relationships and opportunities for Australia. So, look, because it was a public trip, it was an official delegation, I believed it to be completely legitimate and thought I'd executed my responsibilities appropriately.
And you felt the need during the week to apologise for saying in your maiden speech, which was just after the trip, that all school children should be taught Mandarin in New South Wales. Why did you apologise, and where did you initially get the idea for that?
Look, in 2015, I remember reading report after report talking about the rise of China and how it was missing Australia. Australia was missing this opportunity, this once-in-a-generation opportunity to get even a slither of economic activity. I thought it would mean billions and billions of dollars for Australia, a long-term source of economic prosperity. But I was wrong. I mean, the circumstances in China have completely changed. Our relationship with China has changed as well. And it's clear to me now that we need a diversified economy right throughout the Asian region and the world, with trading partners not just in one location but in many locations. Now, that needs to be the focus of our efforts, whether it's the state government or the Commonwealth government. And I was wrong. I misread the situation, and I believe now that the circumstances have dramatically changed.
Well, just finally, your wife Anna was involved in a company called No Borders Trading, which was involved in selling Australian goods to China. Is she still involved with that, and do we have any concerns on that front?
No, she's not, but my wife is an independent businesswoman. She's worked in business for many, many years. I completely support her 100%. She's worked tirelessly in relation to that business and others, bringing Australian products to other markets around the world, not just in China. So there's absolutely no concern about that, and I stand by her 100%.
Of course. Thanks so much for your time, Mr. Mintz.
Thanks, Andrew.